Well, although the end of the financial year is still a couple of months away, it's always best to get your affairs in order sooner rather than later when it comes to organisation. Well, for some hot tips on how to take advantage in the remaining months, MYOB partner Deb Anderson joins me in the studio for the top 5 tips for businesses as the end of financial year approaches. Deb, thanks so much for joining us in the studio today. How important do you think it is for organisations, and in particular small business, to be organised ahead of time when it comes to the end of financial year?
Look, I think most small businesses panic when they see the end of financial year sales come along. You know, it's like, oh, the dreaded 30 June. It isn't the end of the world. However, if you are prepared, it does make it a lot easier. You know, making sure you've got things like your bank recs up to date and just your systems in place will certainly help you.
And do you think it's something that often small business sort of overlooks? We've had a few guests on the show that sort of say they're so focused, small business, on, you know, getting the day-to-day operations that they forget to kind of keep the bookkeeping up to date.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, if anything, GST's been quite good for that, because if nothing else, they have to look at it every quarter.
Now, you have some tips, I know, for top 5 tips, I think, for helping small business get prepared for end of financial year. So firstly, I saw it was to take advantage of deductions, write-offs and rebates. Talk us through this one.
Okay. So firstly, there's a couple of things. One is that superannuation, you can only claim it as a deduction if you actually pay it before the 30th of June. So that's a really important tip. Secondly, if you bring forward purchases, so to take advantage of the asset write-offs.
Yep.
I know they're still up in the air. We haven't heard whether they're being changed from 6,500 back to 1,000 yet, but certainly taking advantage of that. But again, you need to realise if you're not in a profit situation, that's actually not going to help.
How much in advance do you think you need to provide relevant information, you know, to your bookkeeper or to your accountant?
Really good question. I think that sort of by the end of mid-May, you need to make sure you've got everything in order. So make sure all your bank reconciliations are up to date, all your invoicing's up to date. Make sure that you've got an idea of where you're going to be at the end of June. At that point, you can then talk to your accountant, show them what you've got. This is where we think we're going to be in the next 3 to 4 weeks, and you can make some really informed decisions.
You've also got finalise the end of year adjustments, and this obviously helps with transitioning, but is this up to the business itself to finalise these?
Look, it's a combination. One of the things that you need to be aware of with the end of financial year is things like bad debts. You actually need to write them off before the 30th of June for them to be a deduction, but also to prepare for the end of financial year. So things like getting all your employees' details right. So when you're doing their payment summaries, everything's in order. So making sure you've got all those little things in place, like their date of birth, their tax file number, their addresses. So when you do their payment summaries, everything's there on hand, and it's a stress-free process.
And I guess creating a separate copy of your accounts, backing up, how important is this?
Look, backing up is very important. Not as important if you're using a cloud-based system as it was in the old days of having backups, but still really important, especially down the track if you're being audited or something like that, that you can then go back and say, well, this is what we had.
Are you seeing a lot more small business use cloud, or you know, does it depend sort of on the generation that's starting the small business or that's in the small business?
It's interesting, a lot more people are using cloud these days. If you looked back maybe 18 months ago, I would say that a very small minority were, and it was generally those younger business owners. But now I'm seeing a whole range of people. I had a gentleman in the other day, 69 years old, wanting a cloud accounting system. It was great.
Do they need to train themselves up on these sort of systems though?
Some of the systems are so easy. I mean, you look at like the Essentials package is just so easy. You don't really need training. You know, 3 minutes with an online video and you're up and running.
Okay, one of your last tips is preparing for the new financial year. That's quite generic. So what are your sort of, how do you prepare for the new financial year aside from what we've just spoken about?
Preparing for the new financial year can take a few different things. So firstly, doing your budgets for next year, really important. It's a good opportunity to have a look at your business plan and say, right, what worked this year and what can we tweak for next year? And that's a really important point.
Do you think all small businesses need to have a business plan in place?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's crucial. If you don't have a business plan or a budget in place, you don't know where you're going. So if I said to you, here's the keys to the car, go for a drive, you go, that's great, but I don't know where I'm going. But if I say to you, here's the keys for the car, go for a drive to Cronulla, you know where you're going. And that's what a budget and a business plan does.
If you're already established in a small business, is it too late to write a business plan?
No. I look at my business plan every month because it's a working document. It changes every single day.
What sort of challenges are you seeing, you know, the small business sector face right now? Are you seeing when you're chatting to small businesses along the way?
Cash flow, to be honest, I think is probably the biggest issue I'm seeing. A lot of people going to the ATO for payment plans, for their business activity statements and also income tax. So again, going to see your accountant before it becomes a problem is really important.
All right, thanks so much for that, Deb Anderson, MYOB partner there. We do have to take a